The number of schools with kindergartners vaccinated against measles has dropped in half over the past 10 years, so much so that only 1 in 3 schools in the state now has herd immunity, or enough vaccinated children to stop the disease from spreading. Caitlin McLeod is an investigative data reporter at the Arizona Republic and azcentral.com. She's been looking into these numbers, and that's why we asked you on. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. So drop in measles. Do we know why this is happening?
There are 3 reasons that can explain it. One, there is sort of a nationwide distrust of vaccines that has been bubbling up since the pandemic started. And then there are 2 Arizona-specific reasons. One, Arizona does have an exemption law, so parents can choose not to get their kids vaccinated for personal beliefs. And then the other one is because the state up until recently, managed its free vaccine program in a way that drove a lot of providers out of the system.
Yeah, I want to get to that second one in a second, because that's kind of very interesting and kind of fascinating. But these numbers, I mean, there's a Glendale school I think you reported on, 100% in 2015, 46% now vaccinated. That doesn't sound good.
Right, and that was a school, so I found about 70 schools in high poverty areas that had herd immunity and no longer do. And that sort of stat actually troubled the county. It troubles a lot of public health officials because usually schools in low-income areas tend to actually have higher vaccination rates because there are programs to give kids vaccines if they're uninsured or on Medicaid.
So again, in these lower income areas, is it fear of vaccines? Is it they're opting out for personal purposes? Are they taking advantage of that? What's happening here?
I can't be sure exactly where the gaps are because the state wouldn't give me a list of providers that give free vaccines. But the overall idea from my sources in public health is that we're seeing a decline among kids who are uninsured or are on Medicaid because it's harder to find a provider that will actually have vaccines for them that are part of the program that's free.
Is this something happening around the country as well?
No, that is an Arizona-specific problem.
And it's because of that law, the opt-out, and it's because, as you mentioned, this idea that the health department's free vaccine program is kind of not working out all that well. Give us the basics here. What's this all about?
So Maricopa County Health Department noticed that the vaccination rates were dropping a lot. They noticed that they were dropping among uninsured and Medicaid kids. So they launched a third-party study, essentially, to determine what was happening. And that third-party study found that the number of providers providing free vaccines for kids who need them has been cut in half. And they found that doctors said that the state health department staff were harassing them, bullying them, making them pay back the state for vaccines they didn't use, which costs a lot of money, that they had to use an unwieldy tracking system. At one point, the state was trying to fine providers a whole bunch of money, and like 40% of the providers that were being fined were able to prove they didn't actually owe anything. So there was a lot of mistrust that was happening, and providers started dropping out of the program.
And the state's doing this, what, to make sure that they're not wasting vaccines? Why are they doing this?
There was a federal government accountability report that encouraged states to try to waste fewer vaccines, and so Arizona's Ducey administration did respond to that. It's my understanding by really cracking down and saying, like, we're going to hold these doctors accountable if they don't use the vaccines we give them. We're going to really track all of this. That was too. A lot of doctors thought that was too cumbersome, and they started leaving.
Defeating the purpose, then. I mean, goodness gracious, if this plan results in that, I would think someone's out there trying to change all that. Is anything happening there?
They are. Now they're turning around. They are trying to lure doctors back into the program. The state health department recently announced that they are no longer going to be requiring doctors to pay back, vaccines that they don't use, and really loosen a lot of the rules that were making it pretty hard for the providers.
Okay, so relatively encouraging news there, which should, I would think, increase the vaccination rate, perhaps, if it's available. Maybe if that's part of the problem, that should be a bit of a solution.
Right. That is the hope that I'm hearing from public health officials. They're basically saying, it's not going to happen overnight, and also gaining their trust back is going to be hard.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a step that a lot of folks are very enthusiastic about.
And these are public schools we're talking about.
Public, private, and charter schools.
Okay, because I think from your reporting, charter schools, the numbers are even lower?
They are. About 17% of charter schools reached herd immunity last school year. And compared to private schools, it's 33% of private schools, and it's a little bit more than that for district schools.
So, and for parents that are signing off or opting out for vaccinations, what's the process? Do you have to sign a form? Do you have to adhere to? What's the deal?
State law says that parents can exempt their kid from getting vaccinated if they sign a form that says, I understand that these are all the risks. My kid might get the measles and they might have seizures, they might die, they might have brain swelling, all of that. They have to sign a form that says, I understand that. And if they don't sign that form, they're supposed to get their kids vaccinated. Schools don't always bother to collect.
I was going to say, is that enforced at all?
I mean, some schools do.
But not much.
I don't know off the top of my head, but it definitely got worse. I wrote about this in 2013, and they weren't doing it then either.
Goodness, great. So is there let's say the parents just says, I'm not doing this. Is there a penalty involved? There's no penalty involved.
No.
Well, then of course there. I mean, goodness gracious. All right, so the state's trying to do something to move doctors back. Is there anyone looking at this opt-out saying, maybe we need to tighten things up here? Has anyone, a lawmaker, leader, anyone saying, oh, hey, wait a minute?
I asked the state health department about this during an interview, and they said that, they do track compliance, but they said that they don't have any ability to enforce the law. There's no teeth behind the law.
Right.
And then I also asked, well, why do these forms matter? I was like, well, why do these forms matter? Do they matter? I don't know. And then they didn't really answer me. They just told me to ask the schools. And I said, no, I want to know from the state health department why they matter. And I never got an answer.
So last question here. This is great reporting. It's concerning reporting. Are people paying attention? Are people contacting you and saying, where'd you get this stuff? And does it sound like it's moving the needle a little bit?
I get some emails from parents saying thank you for informing us. I did build a tool so that parents can look up their school and see what the trend is over the last 10 years or so. So I'm getting some positive reaction from that from parents.
Where can you find that tool?
On azcentral.com.
Okay, but lawmakers, leaders, they're not saying, hey, this is bad news. Hey, what can we? No, nothing.
I haven't heard much. I mean, I do know that the state health department is trying to lure doctors back into the program, but I don't know what schools are doing because no schools would talk to me for the story. So, I no parents really talk to me for the story either. But the state is doing, they are working on this, and the Maricopa County Health Department is also very alarmed by the dropping. They commissioned a report to study it.
But you know what? Numbers always talk. That's why you're an investigative data reporter.
It's true.
That's how you got your story. And great reporting, Caitlin McQuaid, Arizona Republic. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.